In the intricate dance of betrayal, where every secret has a price, one man's quest for truth unravels a web of deceit that shakes the very core of his world. Prepare to enter a tale of love, loss, and the relentless pursuit of retribution. My wife cheated while I was dealing with mental health issues, so I made sure to get her good. I'm 37 and have been married to my wife, 36, for 9 years, but we've known each other since high school, so she's one of the individuals on the earth who knows the most about me. I can also say that I know a great deal about her. Let me just assume her name is Alice. As we have matured into adulthood together for the sake of relaying the narrative publicly. It breaks my heart to have to seek advice on this topic, but I honestly don't know what to do. And my mental state isn't helping at all. I may need to provide some background information so that you can better comprehend what is going on. I'm not going to get into too much detail. But I had a difficult childhood. If that's not an understatement, I grew up with a drug-addicted mother and a great father who died as a result of my mother's junkie pals. I was the one who discovered him and needed to call 911. I'm not sure I'll ever fully understand how deeply that scarred me. To be honest, I grew up with a tremendous resentment for my mother and women in general. I entered foster care with a very nice foster family, but I was an unnecessary jerk to many of the individuals in the house, but with time, their affection softened me. Despite this, I was still in a lot of discomfort fairly naturally. I began visiting a therapist really early in my life because I've had a lot of mental health concerns, but I always strive to remain positive and fight through them. Meeting Alice in high school was also a huge source of delight for me, and we remained friends for several years before we considered anything romantic again. I used to be really resentful of women, and I believe that having a great relationship with Alice helped me overcome this. Anyway, we both graduated from high school and attended the same college where we both graduated again. Everyone could tell we'd end up together. But I guess in order to be the edgy young adult that I used to be, I'd deny it and pretend clueless to the prospect of ending up with her. Around 2 years after graduating from college, I officially asked her to be my girlfriend. I proposed to her a year later, and we were married 9 years ago. Alice was not around at the most difficult times in my life. But she has always been aware of my mental health issues and has witnessed some of my most difficult battles. I've always apologized for the way I treated her in those instances, as well as the fact that she needs a baby. But she's always been so nice and has said that she doesn't mind. I even questioned her at numerous points in our relationship whether she was sure she wanted to be burdened with me and my problems, but she always said yes and that she'd go the distance with me. I believe that's enough background. With this much background, you should understand what I'm saying. So let me do my best to tell it. The true difficulty began around 4 months ago when I was battling with a severe spell of depression. To be honest, no matter how hard I try to move forward in life, some of the events of the past still have a great hold on me, and it's difficult for me to let go of them fully, no matter how many treatment sessions I decide to attend. However, terrible events have gotten fewer and farther apart. That event lasted around 5 days, and Alice generally spends as much time as possible with me, but it was obvious that something was very different this time. She stayed for the first 2 days, but halfway through the third she appeared cold and informed me she had something she needed to accomplish. I wasn't in the mood to actually query about what she had to do, so she went and returned much later in the night. I'm not sure what time it was, but this happened again 2 days later. On the final day, I saw that she returned at 1 a.m. I didn't say much about it, however, because of how I was feeling. It wasn't until I was completely detached from the situation that I was able to consider it objectively. I'd known her for approximately 2 decades, and that was rare behavior, so it stuck with me for a long time. To be honest, cheating was not among the first thoughts that came to mind. You believe you know people, right? I pondered bringing it up, but for some reason I opted to let it go, which was probably a bad decision. It wasn't until approximately 2 months later, when I was having a particularly horrible day, that I recognized something was amiss. Just like the other time. She vanished midway through the day, and I realized something was seriously wrong at that point. It made the day even worse because it appeared Alice was avoiding me, which was rare for her. Fortunately, this was simply a poor day and not a true case of sadness. So I recovered. However, by the end of the day, she had not returned. As soon as she entered the house, I paused the game I was playing and asked her where she had gone. As far as I remember, she did not answer in an accusing tone, but rather in an exceedingly defensive manner, questioning why I was coming at her like that. It came out of nowhere, and I was astonished, because I was confident that I had not talked unkindly in any way. She seemed ready to explode at me, so I took a deep breath and asked her again as calmly as I could, and she just stared at me, angry, for about 10 seconds before saying she had a date with her girls that she had completely forgotten about. That answer seemed suspicious to me, so I mentioned the last time I was depressed and how she had also gone out during those times, but she said she had no idea what I was talking about. To be fair, it had been almost 2 months by that point, so I didn't want to brand her a liar in my brain. Nonetheless, a pattern was beginning to emerge even after things appeared to be going well between the two of us. It remained on my thoughts because I sensed there was something hidden. I simply couldn't figure out what it was. That was when Alice vanished. On the third occasion, I wasn't having a bad day. I was just so busy that I knew something had to be wrong. It was very clear to me at that point. When she returned home that day, I did not make an attempt to begin a discourse about where she had been. I merely talked about banal things. And she didn't lash out as she would before. I was hoping she'd tell where she was this time. But she didn't. I guess it was at that time that I realized I'd have to figure out where she was heading on my own. I've always been a tech-savvy person, and I'm very comfortable with an Android phone. As soon as my wife got into the shower without her phone, I went directly to Google Maps to look out her location history that night. She proceeded to a bar, then to what appeared to be a residential address. I checked the last time she disappeared like that, and it was very similar. She visited the same bar but ended up at a different house. I was photographing everything with my phone, especially since I intended to do more research on the addresses she was going to. All I needed was for those addresses to genuinely belong to any of her girls, and I'd be so much happier. I was about to check the dates. For the first time she disappeared, but I heard her finishing up in the bathroom, so I stopped. But to be honest, the uncertainty made me feel like I was going insane. I wasn't sure how I'd find the information I wanted based just on their addresses. But I felt it was the only way I could obtain some closure. I realized there were two options. Either my wife was cheating on me, or she was actually going out with her girls. Going to bars and ending up at someone's house may be consistent with what she had told me. But it may also imply that she was going out to bars and returning home with random males. She eventually got out of the bathroom. We made some small chat, which I really struggled with. And she went to bed. She fell asleep with her phone in her hand, and I gently pried it out. My heart was pounding furiously. Trust me, she didn't wake up. And after some mental calculations, I determined that she had vanished unexpectedly on the first day. However, the situation remained consistent during the 3 days. In 2 of those days, she returned to the same address after the bar. I believe it was at this point that I recognized what I had to do. I pondered hiring a private investigator to find out who lived at the locations I had, but I realized there was a simpler method for me to do it. I just need to set her up for the following weekend. I did my best to fake being in a mood, which was much more difficult than I expected given all of my practice over the years. Exactly what I desired. Approximately 6 p.m. Alice went to the room, dressed, and walked out of the house, believing she was unobserved. A few minutes later, I went to put on the comical disguise of sunglasses, a jacket, and a baseball cap. And I walked straight to the pub I knew she was going to. I sincerely hope she is unable to identify the otherwise. My plan might not work again. When I came into the pub, I noticed her sitting there right away. She was alone but had already ordered a drink. I remember wishing her pals would ultimately join her there. I picked a spot to sit in, which I hoped she would not see me. I waited a long time before I noticed someone sitting beside her. They sat in silence for a while before he said anything to her, and I guessed the body language indicated that they did not know each other. But after about 10 minutes, I'd probably come to a different opinion based on how they were laughing and how she continued touching him. I felt like I'd seen enough at that point, but I utilized my self-control to wait and see how things turned out. There was still a dumb part of me expecting her girls would turn up and the guy was only there to pass the time. No. I stayed until about an hour and several drinks later, when they both stood up and left the pub together. I followed them until they walked about 3 blocks away. Then they walked up to an apartment building, and that was it. I thought I was going to lose my mind. And as someone who was already aware of their delicate psyche, this did not help. I felt like I was going insane from across the street near the apartment building. I chose to wait, however. I was going to wait until she got out. I would take a picture and then return home. That was my plan. It was my idea until I saw her walk out with a guy. I snapped numerous photos of them as they stood near the well-lit entrance to the building. But then they had a goodbye kiss right there. I had taken my final photo of the astronaut across the street against my better judgment. And to be honest, I know I was very unprepared. You cannot blame me, however. I can barely remember what I said, but I recall shouting and yelling at her, asking how she could do that to me, stating I knew she was up to something. And so on. I was going to slow down the guy alongside her with a foolish, puzzled expression on his face when she told him to return to his house, and he immediately followed. And it was only me and her. We simply stood there, staring at each other. I know I was shivering with wrath and dealing with a lot of crazy thoughts at the time. You understand what it's like to discover you can't really trust anyone, that anyone may betray you. I believe it was then all of these ideas were racing through my mind that I asked her why. I was tired of dealing with your despair and moods. It is exhausting. I needed happiness. She didn't think much before she unleashed that on me, and to be honest, their statements left me broken. Even today, a few days later, those comments continue to sting. It was exactly what I was hoping to avoid when I wanted her to be certain she wanted to be serious with me, because I've always understood that depression will be a part of my life forever. But she seems to accept me for who I was and am. I had just started walking away at that point. It took me more than an hour to return home since I was walking the streets aimlessly. It was hazardous, yet a part of me wanted to be injured, honestly. Maybe the ache would stop. Or something would happen to make me forget about everything. Looking back, that was a bad idea. But I understand where it was coming from. Alice had already arrived at the house when I returned. And I suppose you had enough time to understand how ridiculous her statements were. She began to beg as soon as she spotted me, but I did not respond. I walked straight to our room and locked the door because seeing her irritated me. I wanted to tell her to leave the house. But I also didn't want to say anything negative about her. I barely slept, but the next morning, I didn't see her. I was relieved I didn't have to interact with her, and I didn't care where she was. I'm still not sure where she is or where she's been, and I don't care, but at this point, I need to hurt her. I've been spending my life with hurt because I've gone through so many traumas. And having the person I thought was my safe zone add to it was one of the most painful experiences I've had. I will read every single remark that is left here because I have nothing better to do, but I want to know how I can hurt her in the same way that she has damaged me. I believe that is the only way that will allow me to have some sense of closure at this time, as I have no desire to cheat back. Imagine overcoming a horrific childhood drama only to be betrayed in your middle years. It's as if life gave you a ticket to an endless emotional roller coaster. Instead of appreciating the scenery, you're left worrying when the ride will finish. But hey, look on the bright side, hope. You've unintentionally carried out a sociological experiment on the boundaries of marital patience and the human capacity for treachery. Just when you think you're having a bad day, your wife's side quest for happiness becomes the main plot. It's almost poetic that her search for happiness includes slipping into the arms of a stranger at a bar. But seriously, if you want to hurt her in the same way she damaged You remember that nothing screams poetic justice like clicking the reset button on your life. Move on. Find someone who knows that depression is not a passing phase and live your best life. After all, the best retribution is to live well and just maybe make her watch you do it from a distance. Realizing what she gave up for a few cheap pleasures at a bar. Update. I'd want to thank everyone who assisted me with my earlier post. To be honest, it was quite difficult for me to open up so completely and show all of my flaws. But the majority of the responses were quite nice and supportive, and I am grateful for that. It's been a while since my last post, but I'm happy to report that things are much better for me now, and I used a lot of the advice you all gave to plan my next step as best I could. The first thing I did was invite you over to discuss. She had no idea, but I had already spoken with a divorce attorney and realized we couldn't restore what we had. I admit that I would have fallen off if she had only cheated on me once, but after cheating on me with what I imagined were numerous individuals and saying nasty things to me, I knew there was no turning back. I would never be able to love this woman again. As soon as she arrived at my residence, I instructed her to sit down, and she complied. I asked her how many people she had cheated on me with, and she initially said only one, but I persisted, telling her that I knew more than she realized. She insisted it was just one person until I bluffed and revealed that I had engaged a private investigator. I named one address after another, and she finally admitted that she had slept with 3 individuals. I'm not sure if that was the full truth, but it was all I needed to hear. I handed her the divorce papers at that time and told her I couldn't live with her anymore. She began begging and pleading, which was not surprising, but I believe she understood it was fruitless and gave up after a while. She left with the documents, and I drank the remainder of the day. We eventually reached to the divorce process's stage, and I was relieved that I had some evidence proving that she was unfaithful, which swung the decision in my favor. Unsurprisingly, my mental health was brought up in the discussion, with much emphasis placed on how difficult it was to live with me. To be honest, things became quite ugly at that point. And it was unpleasant to hear my issues weaponized in such a way. According to what I've seen in movies, most divorces are messy like this. I don't want to bore you with the details, but it dragged on for quite some time. In the end, her lawyer was able to make it appear like coping with me and my mental health had been a huge challenge for her, which I can't admit. It is certainly not easy, but it was not acceptable as an excuse for her infidelity. For the most part, things worked in my favor. I was able to avoid paying alimony and gave up our apartment because it would bring back too many terrible memories for me. I did, however, obtain the automobile, which would undoubtedly be more beneficial to me than the house. After the divorce, weeks later, once I'd settled into my new place, I made sure to inform everyone who knew both of us that Alice and I were splitting up. I went into great detail, not making a single untruth and exposing her for cheating on me. Due of my depression periods, I texted the identical messages to friends, relatives, co-workers I was familiar with, and even our previous landlord. I needed to make sure everyone knew she was a scoundrel so that if they ever got associated with her again, they'd know what they were getting themselves into. She called me an hour later and cast me out for almost 10 minutes straight, but I simply let her vent before hanging up the phone on her. I haven't spoken to Alice since she called me to yell at every curse in the book, but a co-worker responded to a message I sent stating she's been having trouble dealing with workplace gossip, that maybe I'd consider retracting your statement to assist her. I left her on read. I don't think I'll pursue relationships anymore. There is too much fear in me now about how a woman can hurt me, and I'm not looking forward to discovering a new one. Maybe I'll have fun with dating apps because the body has wants. But I don't think I'm looking for anything serious anymore. I'm fairly old. I do not want children. And perhaps not having a lady in my life would provide simplicity, which is great with me. Anyway, I hope those of you who want to do so find ladies you can trust and love for the rest of your lives, because I know they exist, but I'm not prepared to take the chance of finding any of them myself. First, congratulations to those of you who took control of your situation and navigated the emotional minefield of your previous post. It's no small feat to bear your soul like that, and I'm glad to hear you found the help you needed. So now comes the showdown. With Alice. What a scene. You handled it like a true professional, the deception about the private investigator brilliance. She confessed to 3 affairs. It's sorry to see how things turned out, but it's evident that the relationship could not be saved. You recognized your worth and refused to settle for less, which is admirable. The divorce proceedings seemed brutal, especially because your mental health was brought into the forefront. It's frustrating that your issues were used against you, but it's reassuring to hear that things went generally your way. Keeping the automobile and leaving the flat and all its terrible memories seems like a wise decision. Your post-divorce decision to reveal the truth about Alice was both daring and brilliant. That is a masterclass in public service announcements. Sure, she wasn't pleased. And the epic 10-minute curse-out was probably anticipated, but she stayed firm and ensured that everyone around you knew the full story. Here is the next story. Ted was perched in a tree atop a hill with a perfect view of the pool area of a lavish home. He had wrapped his tool in a cloth and worn large rubber gloves while operating a small Monaco-like device. Even though he was just 70 yards away from the pool chaise couches, he kept a tight eye on them. The estate belonged to Richard Stone, a rich entrepreneur. Although the tree Tom Brown occupied was not exactly within the estate's boundaries, it was close enough to allow him to conduct his monitoring unobserved. Richard Stone hired Ted's wife, Emily. She was lovely, with dark blonde hair and a nice physique. For the previous 4 weekends, she had been spending time at Diamond's estate openly with Ted's knowledge, in order to develop a relationship with her boss. This only occurred while Diamond's wife, Sophia, was away performing charitable work. Ted was unsure if Sophia was aware of Emily's visits, given that there was staff on the estate. Diamond and Emily came down to the pool, Diamond wearing swim trunks and Emily in a revealing thong. Wei was not the first time Ted had noticed them dressed like Wei. He had been scouting the estate for weeks and had positioned himself to take control of it. Diamond was exceptionally attractive, with a fit physique, and he and Emily looked great together, especially in their current outfit. Ted could see why Emily was drawn to Diamond, but he had been unable to accept the situation since she first revealed her intentions. Ted and Emily were 37 years old, had been married for 16 years, and had twin daughters, Lily and Anna, who were 15, and looked like their mother. The girls were staying with Ted's parents for a week before going to soccer camp, inheriting their father's athletic abilities. Ted was reportedly out on a bike ride with his best friend, Mark Davis. They'd been buddies since first grade. They were now business partners, running MA, a financial advice firm founded by Ted shortly after graduating from college. Miles did not attend college due to financial constraints, but he had a talent for selling and helped the company grow by promoting its services. Both Ted and Miles were financially secure family men, with children of similar ages attending the same school. Miles married his childhood sweetheart, Laura, who was also Ted's past crush. Despite their similar appearances, Miles won her heart, and Ted eventually found happiness with Emily during college, as Ted waited off the bike path from a distance. Emily was about to experience a shocking event. Ted saw Emily and Diamond exchange a hug that turned into a kiss, but just as they separated, Diamond fell. Emily screamed and collapsed to the ground. Shocked, desperate, she crawled to the pool and dove in. After seeing enough, Ted descended from the tree and quickly disposed of the tool and its cover in the bushes. He removed his gloves and placed everything in a plastic bag on his belt before returning to his bike and pedaling away. He rejoined Miles on the main bike path, ensuring they were alone. Before continuing their ride, Ted disposed of the incriminating evidence in a dumpster behind a gas station after riding for a few miles. The two friends completed their ride and arrived at Miles' house. Ted was not concerned about the tool. He assumed the police would find it eventually, but he doubted they would be able to trace it back to him or extract any DNA from it. He had owned the Magnum for quite some time, inheriting it from a passing acquaintance who did not want his family to keep it. Ted had stored 2 Colts in his garage cupboard for years. Ted had not kept the smaller Magnum in a safe with his grandfather's tools as he had the other old Magnum. Emily revealed her intentions. Ted immediately remembered this and retrieved it from his country property, ensuring it was in working order. He removed its serial number to cover his tracks. He saw his possession of the tool as a testament to the value of holding on to old items rather than discarding them thoughtlessly. When they arrived at Miles' house, Laura greeted them. They hadn't discussed their plans with her beforehand, but they returned around the time she expected them. She welcomed them with cold beers and asked about their ride, to which Miles responded positively, mentioning it was a good workout on a quiet trail. After about 4 hours, Laura hugged them both. She was an attractive woman around their age, with dark hair and a slight frame. Ted always found her appealing, and although they flirted occasionally, they both knew she was Miles' partner. They enjoyed their beers, showered in the pool house, and relaxed by the pool. Laura inquired, "Ted, how long do you reckon this Emily situation will last?" She was aware of Emily's weekend activities, as Ted had confided in them. Both. They were his closest confidants whom he turned to in times of distress or for sensible advice. After consulting with them, Ted had ostensibly devised a plan to let the affair fizzle out, naturally, if it ever did. Laura believed Ted should have promptly kicked Emily out, but Miles had a different perspective, advising to delay divorce until they could safeguard their business and until the twins were older. However, Ted had already made up his mind. He had no tolerance for men who meddled with other men's wives, especially his own. Once he formulated a plan, he discussed it with Miles, and they refined it together. Now, Laura was probing about Emily's involvement with Diamond. Ted responded, "I have no clue. But Laura, my thing with Nora will hopefully endure longer." Laura persisted, "I still think you should get rid of Emily." The relationship between Laura and Emily had always been lukewarm. Although the 4 of them socialized and their children got along, the mothers were not close. Emily had her circle of friends from the country club, while Laura had hers from the Democratic Party and book clubs. Despite their differences, their social gatherings usually went smoothly. Emily showed interest in Laura's interests, although both women had similar jobs as administrative assistants for most of their married lives. However, 2 years ago, Emily started working for Diamond while Laura remained with her accounting firm as they sat together. Ted pondered recent events, contemplating his reaction and why Emily had betrayed him. Despite working for Diamond for almost 2 years, Ted had been oblivious to any issues. Their bed life remained consistent, and Emily hadn't started working late or going on business trips. She usually attended the club on weekends, but often made it to the girls' soccer games when they were home. Ted, on the other hand, never missed any of their games. Ted was taken aback when Emily approached him one late night and said, "Ted, I have something to tell you. I hope it won't mess things up too much. I love you." Ted's reaction was immediate. He wasn't one to show his emotions easily. Most people saw him as stoic, unlike his parents, who often argued and made up passionately. Ted had learned to remain neutral over the years, having grown up as an only child. Therefore, when Emily disclosed her plans, Ted remained silent, his expression unchanged. This didn't unsettle Emily. She had seen this reaction from Ted before. She continued, "Byron and I have developed feelings for each other. His wife is away every weekend from Friday to Sunday evening. I'm planning to visit him at his estate when she's gone, starting this Friday. I don't know how long it will go on. He might grow tired of me, but I feel like I have to do this." Ted remained composed internally as well. He knew immediately that he couldn't stop Emily and had no intention of trying. He also realized that Diamond's fate was sealed, as was their marriage. What he hadn't decided yet was what to do about Emily. He had always loved her, and she was a decent mother. However, he was aware of her self-indulgent and status-conscious tendencies, which had now reached their peak. Putting aside thoughts of Emily, Ted's mind shifted to the Magnum in the garage cabinet. After a brief pause, he smiled, thinking about the Magnum. His unexpected smile surprised Emily. And it was somewhat unsettling. She questioned him with heat. "What's so funny?" Ted reassured her with a smile. "Nothing at all." But that smile lingered, leaving Emily puzzled. She felt a shiver run down her spine at the sight of his smile. Ted rose from his seat and inquired, "Have you gotten intimate with this guy yet?" Emily hesitated before replying. "No, just some kisses." "That's all so far?" Ted declared. "I'll be sleeping in the guest house. Let me know when you're done with the rich boy, then we'll figure out what's next." He then ascended the stairs to gather his belongings for the night. Emily remained seated in the living room, feeling discontented with how things were unfolding. Nevertheless, this was something she desired, and she was determined to pursue it. Although she longed for Byron, she felt lonely sleeping alone. It was only Wednesday. With one more night to endure, she eagerly anticipated her weekend with him. Despite her love for Ted and their life together, she had been feeling restless and drawn to her boss. She wanted him, and she was going to have him. She believed that she and Ted could handle whatever came their way. Ted mulled over various thoughts, finding it hard to sleep on Wednesday night with the twins away for the weekend. He planned to do some reconnaissance and inspect the weapon. Perhaps he'd also have some fun during lunch on Thursday. Ted visited a coffee shop where he often ate. Emma, a young woman around 25 with a fit physique and dark hair, was usually there. There was something about Nora that reminded Ted of Laura, both in her appearance and demeanor over the past few weeks. Ted and Nora had exchanged flirtatious remarks. However, before Emily's revelation, Ted had no intentions of pursuing Nora, but now Nora was already seated when he entered the coffee shop on Thursday instead of his usual spot across from her. He sat next to her in the booth, a change that caught her attention. Nora, no stranger to being hit on, was pleased by the shift. She had been leaving room for him for 2 weeks, hoping he'd take the hint. Despite knowing Ted was married, she found him tempting, especially since she was between relationships, turning to him with a charming smile. She remarked, "Something's different today." "Yep, my wife's decided to mess around with her boss." Ted replied with a smile, his hand resting on her firm thigh. Curiously, she asked, "And I was wondering if you'd like to go out for dinner and dancing Friday night?" He proposed. "Ted, I'd love that." She replied with the same charming smile and a hint of mischief in her soft voice, feeling a bit giddy. Ted realized how silly he must look. She playfully patted his cheek as he battled to suppress his excitement. They exchanged numbers before parting ways. Returning to work, Ted couldn't shake the grin from his face, attracting notice from several of his co-workers and even his wife. Kara noted his improved mood when he arrived home, giving a peace offering of lasagna and salad. She expected Ted's reaction to her previous confession. "Thanks. I'm starving," Ted replied, his demeanor much lighter. Kara couldn't help but feel suspicious, wondering if he had already gone on. As they sat down to dine, Kara broached the matter gingerly. "You appear. I mean, tomorrow I'm going to his place," she began. Ted gave her a deep glance, making an effort to communicate with her. "It is not too late to reconsider, Kara. I truly believe you'll regret this decision in the end," he said, concerned for their family's future. She stopped, seeing a shift in Ted's demeanor. It appeared to be a real plea, eliciting feelings of love. In her emotions, she swiftly moved aside. "I need this, Ted," she said. He replied with a warm smile. "I do not believe we define necessity in the same manner, Kara." After clearing the plates, she made a promising idea. "I hope you can join me in bed tonight." "No, as I mentioned earlier, come meet me when you are finished with your affair." "Then, maybe," Ted reiterated. Kara felt disappointed. She hoped for a moment of intimacy to reconnect with Ted, but it appeared improbable. She now realized she had shut that door when she told him her goals earlier. It made her feel sad as Ted prepared to leave for the guest house. He stopped, then returned to her with a final remark. "Perhaps, Kara, but probably not." With that, he left me alone at the table. Kara considered her options. Her marriage was under threat, and she was becoming increasingly aware of this. She had previously considered the possibility that things would return to normal once her affair was done, but now she saw it as wishful thinking. If she continued with Byron, her life would definitely change dramatically, with unpredictable consequences. She almost ended the affair, but then she wondered what would happen if she did. Ted might never see her the same way again. Accepting this truth, she vowed to go ahead with her plans. When Friday evening arrived, Kara had previously packed a suitcase with essentials and some new revealing nightwear. Before heading for work, she felt nervous when she saw Byron at the office, but his warm grin and kiss soothed her. He didn't ask for second thoughts. "How about your husband?" Kara responded. "I had my doubts, but I want you so much." She licked her lips playfully. "That's exciting." Byron. They left work separately, keeping their plans hidden from the employees. Kara arrived at the estate about 6 p.m. Byron greeted her, opening the car door and leading her into his luxurious home. Once inside, he embraced her passionately, which sparked her excitement. They went to the stairs, where Byron attempted to carry her up, but had to set her down halfway due to his lack of strength in comparison to Ted. Kara ran up to the master bedroom where the bed awaited them, completely naked in front of a new partner for the first time since her marriage. Kara felt elated. She found herself thinking that her feelings were as strong as those she had with Ted. Well, nearly as intense. She was certain that they would eventually achieve new heights. Byron was thrilled. He had defeated this married woman and nailed her well. He was confident that he was the best lover she had ever had. "I just knew it." Later, Byron proposed. They eat dinner and provide robes to both of them. They went downstairs and saw a little feast prepared out. Kara knew she was starving. They ate and chatted casually. Byron questioned, "Did you enjoy yourself?" A common question. Kara nodded in response, "Absolutely." "And you?" "The best." Kara broke into song, "Simply the greatest." "Better than the rest." Byron did not recognize the tune. Looking perplexed. It was a song she and Ted frequently sang together, and she felt guilty about using it with Byron. Following supper, they went upstairs to watch a romantic comedy in bed. Byron sought more closeness, but Kara wanted to finish the film first. They eventually made love again, utilizing the missionary position. Kara was impressed by Byron Stamina's 3-round performance, though the third was less exciting. Ted picked Nora up in his old MGB convertible, which he enjoys driving. Nora was impressed with the ride and Ted's dazzling appearance in his blue suit. Ted admired Nora's dark crimson dress, which was cut to impress. They ate at the fancy Wellington Hotel and had a terrific lunch before going to a neighboring dance establishment with live music. Ted, an accomplished dancer, admired Nora's abilities on the dance floor and found her movement seductive. She reminded him more and more of Laura, albeit younger and better at dancing. They danced until they both realized they wanted to go somewhere else. Ted turned the car around and Nora got in, making a bold suggestion. "Take me to your apartment. Then, let's have fun there." Ted drove carefully, staying within the speed limit. 15 minutes later, he opened his front door to Nora, but they didn't get past the living room. Nora did a brief strip for Ted and Ted returned the favor. Then they stood there, staring at one another, until Nora jumped Ted and pushed him onto the couch. Nonetheless, Ted managed to avoid coming. He was always on the brink, close but still vibrating. Nora had never been through anything like it, and she had an almost continual sequence. Sometimes she chanted, "God! God!" Nora kept a close eye on Ted as he prepared breakfast. She realized she was in love but wasn't sure. Nonetheless, she couldn't shake the feeling as Ted served the eggs and toast. Nora finally admitted her feelings. "Ted, I love you. I had to tell you." Ted was taken aback, but he considered her statements. I believe I feel the same way. It's amazing how fast it happened. After they finished their meal, Nora inquired. What do we do next? Ted grinned and said, what else? Then he raised her once again. Kara and Ted's weekend adventures resumed in the same way they had started. Kara was pleased with Byron, who had given her several orgasms. Ted thought he was deeply in love with Nora. On Sunday afternoon, Kara and Byron decided to meet again the following weekend. Ted and Nora began to consider how to proceed with their newfound relationship. They set a date for the following Friday, depending on Kara's plans, and planned to meet for lunch each day. Ted dropped Nora off at her condominium. Despite her young, she was able to afford a decent house as a lawyer. Meanwhile, Kara drove home from Byron's house. She walked in just as Ted had returned. They exchanged looks. Ted smiled, but quickly suppressed it when he noticed Kara's reaction. How was your weekend? Lonely? Kara inquired. How was Richie Rich? Ted countered. If Kara had been honest, she would have said he was thrilling. But you're better. Instead, she just said, he was great. I'm returning next week. The girls won't return until Sunday evening. They ordered Chinese for dinner all week. Ted and Nora met for lunch every day. They planned to go to a concert on Friday and spend the weekend at her apartment. Throughout the week, Ted and Kara's interactions at work were mechanical. Kara and Byron were discreet at home. Kara thought Ted would give in and become intimate with her, but he was resolute. He slept in the guest house every night and spent the evenings watching baseball or reading. Never with Kara. Basically, he disregarded her. A frozen marriage. When he returned to the guest house, he quickly slipped out the back to view the Diamond estate. Armed with Google Maps and night vision goggles, he began mentally planning the arrangement. He also spent money on a sound amplification gadget to improve his eavesdropping capabilities. The following weekend, he and Nora had a good time, but she had a standing Sunday lunch with her parents, so their last encounter was in the morning before she left. Ted then went to investigate the Diamond estate further. He frequently saw Diamond and Kara at the pool, where they appeared to spend most of their time. The directional gadget worked well, allowing him to overhear portions of their talks, which he found boring. During the third week, the twins returned home. They could not help but notice their parents' evident split. Lily questioned Mom and Dad over supper one Tuesday. What's going on? Kara responded, we're facing some challenges, but we'll figure them out. Do not worry. Both twins looked to Ted for answers. He shook his head and stated, the truth is, your mother has chosen to be in a relationship with her boss. So I've moved into the guest house. What comes next is undetermined. Kara was upset by Ted's directness, but she didn't answer right away. She muttered, I felt like I needed an A. Anna spoke out, introducing a new companion. It seems. How could you, Mother? Kara rushed off upstairs. Anna then asked, are you getting divorced, Dad? I do not know. Everything is up in the air, but can you keep this between us? They both agreed, agreeing to keep the information discreet. I have made a new acquaintance. I will introduce you this weekend when your mother is with her new acquaintance, Ted informed them. Lily deduced. Do you mean you have someone special you want us to meet? So it must be quite severe, right? Could be. Until your mother's actions, I would never have approached Nora. But she did. So I did. And who knows where this will lead? Anna asked. Whom? Ted chuckled. Whom? You're a clever person, Anna grinned. Lily inquired, how did you move so quickly, Dad? This is not your usual pace. Nora and I had met for lunch before. Perhaps I was feeling uncertain or inadequate. I figured Nora might want to go out with me. It turned out she was the girl who fell into a pensive silence, prompting Ted to let them reflect. Finally, he asked, anything else on your mind? Lily questioned. When do we get to meet her? I will plan something for this weekend. You have a game on Saturday afternoon, correct? Yep. Perhaps Nora and I will show up, Lily noticed. That is another giveaway. Dad. We had no reservations about being seen with her, even by our friends' parents. Ted was not surprised by their perceptiveness. He figured it would take them a little longer to piece everything together. Nothing is set in stone yet. I like Nora, but the situation is unpredictable, he explained. The conversation ended and Emily remained upstairs. The speaker was absent from the discussion. Meanwhile, on Friday, Emily returned to Diamond's estate. The weekend was enjoyable, but she was occasionally bored. Byron's preferences were more limited than Ted's. Emily tried to introduce new activities, but he wasn't very interested. He preferred the missionary and doggy styles and was not interested in Emily taking the lead. He wasn't excited about giving her oral pleasure, but he enjoyed receiving it. Furthermore, Byron's stamina was limited to 3 times per day at most, and he had no desire to cuddle. Because their affair was secret, they had a lot of free time when they weren't intimate. They couldn't venture out, so they remained confined to the estate. Fortunately, they had ample space for outdoor activities like hiking, and they made frequent use of the pool during that same weekend. Ted and Nora went dancing once more, this time at a local club. They ran into one of Nora's friends, Laura Blake, whom Ted met. Ted wasn't planning on hiding his relationship with Nora. They had a blast dancing, leading to Ted spending the night at Nora's place and leaving at 1 in the morning. The twins were awake when he got home. Ted greeted them in the living room with a wide grin, telling them they should be asleep since they had a game the next day. Anna pointed out that they were waiting for him, just like he did for them. Lily noticed Ted's grin and started to speculate, but Ted cut her off, urging them to go to bed because they had a game at 10. And Nora was joining them. Nora arrived at 8:30, feeling nervous, along with Ted and the twins. When Ted introduced Nora to Lily and Anna, there was a brief silence. Finally, Ted broke it, introducing the girls. Nora greeted them awkwardly, but tried to find common ground by mentioning she played soccer in college as a striker for Notre Dame. Anna, intrigued, asked where she played, and Nora's response left Ted and the girls impressed. Anna had a soccer ball, enrolled it to Nora, who skillfully lifted it with her foot and passed it back using her knee. This exchange brought smiles all around. Ted suggested they head to the game where the girls showcased their soccer skills, usually teaming up at midfield to dominate the game. Ted and Nora watched from the sidelines with Nora barely able to contain her excitement, bouncing up and down, drawing attention from other parents. The game was intense and thrilling. The opposing team scored 2 goals, but the home team managed to tie it with just 2 minutes remaining when the opposing coach made a substitution. Nora tipped off Anna about their strategy. Anna intercepted the pass and scored a goal, securing victory during the car ride home. Lily mentioned that people were curious about Ted and Nora's relationship, but Ted didn't seem bothered by it. They stopped for pizza, and then Ted and Nora spent time together at her place before returning with Chinese food for dinner. Eventually, Ted announced that he and Nora were heading to the guest house for the night, prompting Anna to jokingly ask them to keep it down. Nora laughed and assured them she would try her best. After Nora and Ted left, the girls had a deep conversation. They really liked Nora and noticed that their dad was growing fond of her too. It felt like their old family life was fading away. Suddenly, Lily expressed her frustration, blaming their mom for ruining things by having an affair. Anna shared the sentiment, questioning how their mom could do such a thing. Lily concluded it was selfishness, causing their mom's actions. Anna suggested they adapt to the changes and remain hopeful. Meanwhile, Ted and Nora enjoyed their time together. The next morning, they made breakfast for everyone, and Nora even gave the twins a soccer lesson. Later, she had to visit her parents. Ted and the twins had a lengthy discussion about their next steps. Ted tried to reassure them about their mom and assured them that even if they divorced, they'd still live in the same house and have contact with both parents. They also talked about how the girls should handle interaction with Emily, aiming for a civil approach. Then Emily walked in, creating another uncomfortable moment as they all exchanged glances. She expressed her love for the girls and Ted, but Anna calmly pointed out the contradiction between her words and actions. Emily admitted she couldn't fully explain, but insisted her actions were temporary. Lily expressed doubt about this. Emily then announced she would make dinner, and they all sat down to eat stir-fry with chicken. Conversation was strained, but Emily asked about the soccer game, and Ted shared Anna's success. After dinner, Ted announced he was going to the guest house. Emily suggested he stay, but he declined, questioning her about her affair. Emily expressed uncertainty but mentioned they would spend the weekend indoors. Ted warned her about the consequences of their actions being noticed, but Emily seemed resigned to the situation. Ted bluntly stated that their marriage was over. Shocking Emily, who ran upstairs in tears. Morning came and she decided to act normally. She had work ahead, as did Ted. Meanwhile, the girls were getting ready for their trip to their grandparents' house and then to nature camp. After lunch, Ted sat down with Nora and filled her in on what went down after she left. Later, he headed home to assist the twins with packing. Emily's day took an unexpected turn when Elizabeth phoned her. Elizabeth inquired Emily, who was that lovely young woman with Ted at the soccer game. Caught off guard? Emily replied, "Which young woman?" Elizabeth elaborated, "You know, a former soccer player. Quite attractive." "We were all curious where you were," Emily muttered. "Damn. Relax, Emily. There wasn't anything obvious between her and Ted, you know." Emily retorted. "Really? Well, nobody's mentioned her to me." "What's her name?" "Nora." "Emily, where were you? I've heard some unbelievable things." Elizabeth pressed Emily aside. "Like what?" "Elizabeth, like the rumor that you left Ted for your boss." "That's not true." "I didn't leave him," Elizabeth continued. "Well, Catherine at the club mentioned that her cousin, who works at Mr. Diamond's home, saw another woman there on weekends." "Damn it. So it's really you?" "Good Lord, Emily. Good Lord. It's not meant to be. Forever. Elizabeth just weakens you, for Ted's already with someone else, and you know what? I can't blame him. She's young and attractive. Your daughters seem to know her already. You're screwed in more ways than one." Emily hung up, feeling deeply shaken. Later that evening, Emily and Ted dropped the girls off at his parents' house. The car ride home was silent, but as soon as they entered the house, Emily turned on Ted and slapped him. He stepped back, startled. "What the hell? You've replaced me. You jerk. You're one to talk. What did you expect? You must have had her lined up. How long have you been cheating on me? I only knew her from the coffee shop. We never even kissed until you started things with your boss. So screw you, too. Wait, I'll never do that again." "Which?" Emily stormed off and Ted retreated to the guest house. Later, he slipped out the back, dressed in dark clothes. He found a good spot to observe Diamond from a tree. Tonight, he planned to test out the sound device. He set it up and waited until he spotted Diamond and his wife on a terrace, sipping wine. When he tuned into their conversation he overheard Diamond saying, "And it won't last too much longer." "You have your boy toy?" Sophia replied. "Only because you started it. This one's like the fourth or fifth bimbo," Diamond said. "I keep you in style, Myra. Don't mess that up." "Why are they always married? Do their husbands know?" "Yes. I make them tell their husbands. I prefer it that way. When we have social gatherings, I smile at all the cooks. Someday, boy, you'll cross the wrong one. Now, what's the worst that could happen? They might split from their wives. But they've all got kids, so they just suck it up. And even if they do divorce, tough luck. You're a real piece of work by a real jerk. But I'm good in bed, right?" Sophia chuckled. "You think so?" My dad shuns better. Diamond laughed. Their conversation wandered from there. Ted climbed down and rode away. Until then, Ted had been thinking that getting involved with Diamond was unnecessary and risky. He had a plan, and he thought it could work out. But now he had Nora. Kara's affair had opened that door. Maybe he thought he should be grateful to Diamond, but overhearing that conversation had reignited his anger. The next day, he went into Miles' office, and they had a discussion. Nora spent the weekend with Ted and the girls. They slept in the guest house, but spent time together like a family. They even had more soccer lessons after the Saturday game. On Saturday night, Ted and Nora enjoyed their usual great time in bed as they lay there. Afterward, Nora asked, "What do you think will happen, Ted?" I mean, maybe it's weird to ask, but are we exclusive? Ted chuckled. You mean, am I seeing my wife on the side? Nora giggled. Yeah, I definitely am not. I'm committed to you. You could be that special woman if you want. I feel like I'm breaking up a marriage. You and Kara were together for so long. It wasn't you. Once Kara left for her boss, I was done with her. It didn't take long for me to feel liberated, and I benefited from that. I'm grateful. The next morning, they had another energetic round in bed and then went to cook breakfast. Nora left a bit early to help her mother prepare a gorgeous cake. Ted informed the ladies he was going on a bike ride with Miles. He hugged them tightly and galloped off. Earlier in the week, Ted had prepared the tool and left it loaded and wrapped beside the tree he'd chosen when he dropped his bike and headed there. He almost wished someone had taken it. But it was still there. He had major misgivings even as he climbed the tree. But then he remembered the jerk's chat with his wife, Sophia, and when he noticed his nearly naked wife kissing the guy, he said, "Screw it. Time for that insanity to cease." As Ted and Miles sat sipping beer after their bike ride, Laura raced out from the house. I saw on TV. Diamond's been shot. He's not alive. Diamond passed. Ted jumped up. What about Kara? They say a woman was present but wasn't wounded. Miles exclaimed, "My God." He pulled out his phone to check the news. Miles had kept Ted's cell phone with him during the voyage. It was still within his waist pack. He waited until Laura was on the phone before handing Ted's phone over to him. However, Laura saw that she didn't give it much thought at the moment. Ted tried contacting Kara but received no response. I'd best head home. Perhaps someone phoned there. He rode off on his bike. When he got home, the landline was ringing. Hello? Is it Tom Brown? Yes. This is Detective Harvey from the APD. There was an incident, but your wife did not sustain any injuries. A man's voice. Do you mean Diamond? My friend informed me what had happened. I cannot say Mr. Diamond died. Your wife is currently at the station. She's very rattled up. Can you come get her? Sure. Main station? Yes. Third floor, front desk. Ted put on shorts and a t-shirt over his biking gear. He took his wallet and phone from the fanny pack while holding the car keys. He went out. He had no idea what he would find at the station. He found an invitation to make a remark. He was assured that he may see Kara once that was done. Detective Harvey came out to be a healthier-looking older white man, even if he had grey hair. He had a lovely tall brunette partner named Stella Blaine. Ted sat in a tiny room with them, answering all of their inquiries. Despite receiving his Sophia warnings, they inquired about his day, and he told them about his bike ride and everything else. Then they asked if he was aware of Kara's relationship with Diamond. Yes. Did you? How did you feel about that? Harvey asked. I disliked it, but I went on. What does this mean? I've discovered someone else. Another woman. So you are in an open marriage? No. She just announced she was doing this, and I reacted. Do you have any magnums? Yes. I own a safe. We'll need to look inside it soon. All right. You are welcome to join me as I care for the house. The cops obtained a wealth of information on the bike ride addresses and Ted's other acquaintances. Then they left him alone in the small room for a while. The door was locked, and Ted sat there, browsing through his phone. After around 15 minutes, Harvey returned and asked if they might inspect the phone. Ted responded, "I'll give you the number, but there are some work-related things on the phone that I don't want to make public." "Nothing is illegal. We could obtain a warrant. In that scenario, you might have to do it. I expect there to be some limits." He gave them the number and agreed to let them clear the phone. They estimated it would take around 30 minutes, so he gave it over. Then they led him to Kara. She was wearing someone else's t-shirt and pants and appeared terrified. "Kara, are you okay?" Ted inquired. "No. God. He passed." "I was right there," she responded. "I apologize, Kara. As soon as they finish with my phone, I'll take you home." "Okay, Ted." She paused for a moment before continuing. "Ted, I apologize for all of this, but we can discuss more on the way home." He hugged her. The detective soon brought the phone, and they left the station together. Kara inquired of Ted after they had entered the automobile. "Have you asked him?" "No, I might not be sorry. He got it, but I did not do it." Kara stared at him carefully. "I know you. You could have. But then you discovered that girl. So I did not do it." "Did you witness anyone do that to him?" "No. I heard a gunshot." She began crying. Ted parked the SUV in their driveway, brought Kara inside, and greeted the cops when they arrived. He escorted them into the safe where they examined the tools and inquired about the ammunition. They took one box of cartridges but abandoned the rest as they stepped outside. Harvey turned to Ted and stated, "We will be testing the Colts we found. You'd better get ahead of this, Mr. Vincent. I know nothing about a Colt, and I did not do it." "Anyone?" Ted responded. "All right. We will be in touch." Ted went inside to discuss with his wife. Before that, he called Nora and explained what had transpired. She already knew a few aspects. He asked her to come over later. Kara was settled. He called his parents and the twins. They had a lengthy conversation about what had happened that day. One question was whether the twins should continue attend nature camp the following week. They all agreed that they should keep clear of any potential problems. They vowed to keep in touch with Ted and Kara every day. Kara took a prolonged shower. I wondered about her mental state. He reasoned that taking up all the hot water might imply distress. Not surprising. He was waiting for her when she emerged, dressed in a robe. "It must be tough. Do you feel better now?" he asked. She grinned. "Not exactly. But the hot water had run out." "Yes, I figured. What do you feel like doing? Maybe we should get some pizza. I am starving." Ted ordered, feeling a little guilty about the pepperoni, but he figured some comfort food would help relieve the tension. Kara noticed Ted across the pizza. "I've been thinking about you. I'm not totally sure of your innocence. Where were you today?" "I was out for a bike ride with Miles," I informed the cops. "He said that he will cover for you." "Sure, but he doesn't have to. I admit that I occasionally lose my anger. But I did not do that to the guy. He earned it." "You were correct about that. Are you considering divorcing me?" "Maybe. I mean, you really surprised me, Kara. After all this time, you desired a wealthy man. I will give you that." He looked good. He certainly was. But honestly, Ted, he didn't live up to his appearance. "Sorry, no, you are not correct. I take back my apology. You have another woman, Nora. They believe she is younger and more gorgeous. Yeah, she's really lovely in a sporty manner. She played college soccer and quickly became your new romantic interest. I bet you were with her before I became connected with Byron." "No, it was most likely around the time we went dancing initially." "Why would you want to know? I might lose my job." "Are you leaving me?" "I know it. I need to support myself. And we have the Prenuptial agreement. I will not allow you go hungry. And perhaps you will find work. Maybe Sophia isn't too happy with me. Ted's phone vibrated. It was Nora. He entered the living room. Kara followed at a distance. She overheard their vows of love. If she had been wearing shoes, she would have kicked herself. As Ted warned Nora not to come over, Kara entered the room and said, "Let her come, Ted. I suppose it's time we met." 30 minutes later, Ted answered the doorbell and welcomed Nora inside. Kara was dressed in the kitchen. She looked tired but still attractive. The two women stared at each other for about a minute. Nora then said, "I am sorry for what you are going through. You must be very shaken." "Thank you. I was. This entire situation is messed up. You took my husband. You left him. Not my fault." They stood approximately 10 feet apart. Ted positioned himself to step in, if necessary. Kara was trembling. She began sobbing again. Nora approached her and gave her a hug. Kara cried into Nora's shoulder. This interaction took Ted by surprise. Nora set Kara down on the couch and maintained contact. Ted was able to sit next to Kara and embrace her. Kara sobs, eventually quieting. She sat up and asked Ted if the hot water was ready. "Yes, it is." She took another shower after using up the hot water. Ted handed her a medication and she fell asleep in their bed. Ted and Nora chose to remain in the guest bedroom. They did not want to leave Kara alone in the house. When they turned on the television at 10 p.m., Diamond's murder was all over the news. Diamond reportedly had affairs with numerous married women, the majority of whom worked for him in some manner. So Ted was not the lone suspect. Later, CNN reported that some persons may have had business interests for getting rid of Diamond online. There was speculation that Diamond's wife could have been involved. After 11 o'clock, Ted shut off all media. He and Nora settled into bed. At first, neither felt the need for closeness, but Nora remained mute. Ted got up early and checked on Kara. She slept until 9 and then took a shower. By 10 a.m., all three were seated at the breakfast table. Nora's pancakes are delicious. Nora's phone rang, Mozart playing. She answered. And it was the cops calling to set up an interview. Nora asked Kara and Ted, "Should I bring them here?" Kara nodded. "We can receive an update." So at 11, detectives Harvey and Blaine arrived and led Nora into a private room to take her statement. After about 25 minutes, they all reconvened in the living room. Kara asked, "Is there any news about who did this?" Blaine replied, "Not yet. Many persons could have had a motivation," Harvey added. "Including you, Mr. Vincent." Ted replied, "We've already discussed this." "Yeah, thank you for your cooperation, everyone." They left. Laura called. She informed Ted that the police had come to take statements about what he had done. They were courteous but thorough. Ted stated he would catch up with Miles at work. The three of them weren't sure what to do next. Nora inquired if I should leave. Kara responded, "No, I understand. Ted could want you to stay." Ted nodded. They all sat out on the back patio, drinking coffee. Kara was becoming more like herself. But there was a sorrow about her. Ted and Nora anticipated additional obstacles ahead. Kara mentioned, "I keep repeating the scene where he is bleeding out. He never moved. I'm wondering if I'll always remember that sight." Nora spoke up in my psychology class about mourning. They stated that those images last the longest, but that they gradually fade and become mixed up with other memories over time. Kara nodded attentively. "I certainly hope so," Ted inquired. "Have you heard from work yet?" "No, I reported directly to Byron. I haven't heard back from him. But I did handle some business for him. I allowed some things to happen while handling others on my own. Whoever takes over will require someone like me," Nora asked. "Do you have any idea who that might be?" "My guess is Sophia. I know what's in his will because I saw it. She inherits everything." but a few items for his mother, Ted added. Do you want to continue working there? Yeah, like I mentioned, I need to sustain myself. Ted cast a glance at Nora. So until you get back on your feet? Kara inquired. Did you? To remain in the house last night? Nora nodded inside the guest room. Kara expressed. I hope this continues for a while till I am settled. Her sentence had a double meaning which Ted and Nora picked up on. Ted reassured the girls that everything would work out and that they would return next week. Kara questioned Nora. I heard you attended their game. Yeah, it was exciting, Kara admitted. I feel so dumb. He had a succession of girlfriends. He manipulated us all, Nora remarked. Well, he was a charming jerk. You've just committed a mistake, Ted pondered. I believe you've been feeling uneasy for a while. Not just at work but also at home, Kara reflected. That is true. I am not sure what triggered it. Perhaps it was a grass is greener thing. She paused. Then everything came apart. And I lost control over my life. She hurried inside. The other two agreed to give her some space. They could hear pots and pans clanging as Kara got busy in the kitchen. Kara baked a chocolate cake and finished by noon. Nora and Ted joined her later, casually chatting while they watched. They ate sandwiches while waiting for the cake to cool enough to ice. The day progressed. Similarly, Nora made burgers for dinner and Kara prepared a salad. They worked on tasks without discussing what lay ahead. Kara went to bed at 9 p.m. but had nightmares twice that night. One of which included screaming. Ted comforted her every time. The following morning, Tuesday, Nora had to go to work for court, and Ted considered going to work. However, he was concerned about leaving Kara alone while Ted considered Kara's phone call. It was Sophia. Kara said it to speaker. Sophia inquired, will you be coming to work today? Do I still have a job? Kara inquired. Yes. Although things may be stressful, we still have tasks to complete, and you cannot be replaced immediately. So regardless of your involvement with Byron, I need your help if possible, Sophia responded. Kara looked to Ted for reassurance before responding. I can be there within an hour. Good. Come to the house and enter from the back to avoid any discomfort. Sophia instructed Kara, follow the directions, and met Sophia in the office on the second floor. After a handshake, Sophia asked, I'm curious before we begin. Why did Byron appeal to you? I've seen your husband. Is he not satisfactory? Kara replied. No, he's wonderful. But Byron seems so impressive. Yes, he may have appeared that way, but he wasn't as good as he seemed, Sophia remarked. Kara agreed. I understand he was adequate. At best, he tended to disappoint. Perhaps you hadn't reached that point yet, Sophia suggested. Maybe, Kara acknowledged. Let's get started. Sophia concluded. The two of them spent the entire day catching Sophia up to speed and making arrangements regarding Byron. However, the body was not yet available for disposal at 6 p.m. Sophia glanced up and proposed. I want to stick around for dinner. We've got more to do afterward. Sure. Back at home, there's Ted and his companion, Kara replied. I've heard. Is she attractive? Sophia inquired. Yeah, and young. He slept with her the first night after I left, Kara disclosed. So they're a couple now? Sophia pressed. Seems like it. My daughter appeared to like her, too, Kara confirmed. Sophia stared at Kara and proposed with a smile. Well, if you need some relief, I can offer one of my male toys. They know how to satisfy. Kara flushed and responded. Not just yet, Sophia. Just give me a heads up, you know. Now that we women are in power, maybe it'll be the males who have to step up any preferences. Sophia teased. Well, if it came to that, I'll take a guy toy. I don't want to mess up any families, Kara commented. You're too kind, Kara, Sophia commented. They had dinner, and Kara left for home at 9:30, having gotten a significant wage rise from Sophia. Ted and Nora were intrigued about Kara's employment history, particularly considering the embarrassing scenario. Kara described her day and the chores she had been allocated. She also mentioned receiving a raise. "I will no longer be dependent on you. It looks like I can sustain myself," Kara commented. Her expression was less than pleasant. Ted began. But Kara cut in. "Sophia offered me one of her boy toys in case I ever needed it. I declined." For the time being, Kara shared. Nora gave a gasp. "Really? How do they look?" Ted was slightly offended by Nora's interest, but stayed mute. "I have no idea. I didn't even realize she had any," Kara admitted. For the next 6 weeks, Kara worked long hours for Sophia, either at the office or at her home. They did a lot throughout this period. Ted filed for divorce around 2 weeks after the incident, which surprised neither Kara nor the twins. Sophia arranged for Kara to get a lawyer, and the divorce proceedings were pretty simple to work out. They came to a deal and signed the documents within a few weeks. During this period, the twins stayed in the house with Ted and Nora, which did not upset Kara too much. She and the twins were steadily mending their friendship and spent several Sundays together. Kara's day off, Ted and Nora returned to the main house, and Nora gave up her unit. She adopted a quasi-mom role with the girls, and the situation became more comfortable over time. After a delightful session of sensuality, Ted proposed to Nora, asking if she wanted to marry him. Nora was initially taken aback, but eventually accepted, stating her desire to have children. Ted calmed her and made a joke about having to change her diaper again. They kissed, and 6 months later, they got married. Nora got pregnant 2 months later. Meanwhile, despite repeated comments by journalists, the police investigation into the high-profile event involving a billionaire has come to a halt. The public's attention faded. Over time, authorities sought to confirm alibis for suspected suspects, including 6 husbands, but made little progress. They even investigated Sophia's actions and discovered no evidence linking her to the crime. Eventually, the inquiry stopped, and the case was only brought up for appearances on occasion. Kara immediately became indispensable to Sophia and the organization. Thanks to her intelligence and familiarity with operations, she outperformed everyone else, except Byron, who wasn't much assistance. Sophia spotted Kara headed to her room to shower on a Saturday afternoon as they were finishing work. Kara had never used the pool before, and Sophia was determined to alter that. When Sophia noticed Kara drying off after her shower, she threw her a robe and encouraged her to follow. Kara complied out of curiosity. Sophia was her boss. Sophia led her out to the pool area as they approached. Sophia teased Kara with a surprise, but hesitantly. Kara figured it might be a good change. They arrived at the poolside, where 2 attractive young men lounged on chairs, one black and one white, but both well tanned. Both were naked. Kara was taken aback, but Sophia explained that Kara hadn't been intimate since the incident, so she had set up a choice between the 2 men, Damon and Chad. Kara was stunned, but she also felt a surge of excitement at the unexpected proposal. Kara and Damon put on a real show for Sophia and Chad, who only saw Sophia, and Chad applauded them. And that is how Kara overcame her fear of the pool. Kara's life changed dramatically, but it wasn't all bad. She had her pick of Sophia's companions, and she enjoyed her job. On Sundays, she spent time with her daughters, sometimes accompanied by Ted and Nora. Nora gave birth to Daniel. Kara was overjoyed, but slightly envious. Ted and Nora were also overjoyed during a private conversation. Nora inquired about Kara's romantic life, and Kara did not hold back, sharing all the details. That night, Nora and Ted's intimacy reached new heights, reigniting the passion they had before. Daniel arrived. Nora and Kara occasionally had heart-to-heart talks, which Kara saw as a way to atone for her previous mistakes, a kind of family service. Baby Samantha soon joined the fold. Everything worked out in the end, except for one evening when Laura found herself chatting with Ted in the backyard after putting all of the kids to bed, and Miles and Laura had come over for dinner. They stopped by the guest house, and Laura mentioned something she had noticed. She remarked on her resemblance to Nora before confessing that she had considered Ted as a partner, but chose Miles instead. Ted was taken aback and questioned why. Laura explained that she noticed an underlying anger in Ted, possibly inherited from his parents, that he often kept hidden. Despite this, she still cared for him deeply. She then brought up the incident with the phone, noting the risk Ted took and the loyalty Miles showed. Ted pondered her words in silence for a while before considering counseling, but Laura encouraged him to embrace his true self. They walk back together, ready to rejoin their spouses. You know, the saying everything ends well when it ends well, but not this time. One night after the kids had gone to bed, Miles and Laura were visiting for dinner as they were in the backyard. Laura took a stroll with Ted. They stopped near the guest house, and she mentioned Miles, and I couldn't help but notice how much Nora and I resemble other. It's quite flattering. Ted grinned and joked, you could have picked me instead, you know. But I chose Miles. Want to know why I never had any idea? You carry this hidden anger within you. Maybe it's from your family. You keep it concealed. But I still love you. Despite that, it's just a part of who you are. Always present. Maybe. I guess I don't usually dwell on it, but I do sometimes. Yet you've built a good life for yourself and your loved ones, and for Miles and me as well. But Ted, I notice Miles passing you your phone after your bike ride. I saw it. I didn't immediately understand its significance. You both took a big risk. A really big one. Ted was quiet for a long, gazing at Laura. He finally said, maybe I should seek counseling. Laura grinned and answered, no need for that. It's just who you are. It always will be. And don't forget, Miles and I care for you no matter what. They walk back together to rejoin their mates in. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so previously. Also, leave a comment below to express your thoughts on what transpired. Take care.